I was standing in a high-end boutique in downtown Seattle, draped in a strapless ivory gown with French lace, looking at my reflection when my phone buzzed. I figured it was a congratulatory text, but the woman on the other end had a different tone. She asked, "Miss Hartman, why haven't you paid the $207,000 balance for your heart surgery at Northwestern Memorial in Chicago?" My world spun. I had never been to Chicago, and I definitely didn't have a heart condition. Someone had hijacked my identity to wreck my life, and that someone wasn't a stranger. It was my own sister. My name is Rebecca Hartman. I'm 31 years old. The woman on the other end of the line spoke with that practiced patience that collection agents use when they think you're lying. She wanted to discuss my overdue balance of $207,412 for the experimental cardiac procedure I'd received at Northwestern Memorial Hospital in Chicago. The surgical suite time alone had cost $60,000. I stood there in the bridal boutique in downtown Seattle, wearing a strapless ivory gown with French lace, staring at my reflection while my stomach turned itself inside out. "I've never been to Chicago," I told her, my voice barely cutting through the classical music playing overhead. "I've never had heart surgery." She sighed like she'd heard this 1,000 times. "Miss Hartman, I'm looking at your signature right here on the consent forms, your insurance information, your social security number." My reflection in the three-way mirror started to blur at the edges. The boutique suddenly felt too warm, too small, the floral perfume from the scattered candles clogging my throat. My best friend Maya touched my shoulder, her face creasing with concern, but I couldn't hear what she was saying over the rushing sound in my ears. That night, sitting at my kitchen table with a glass of wine I couldn't taste, I started pulling the thread that would unravel everything. Medical records I'd never seen, insurance claims for conditions I didn't have, a heart failure diagnosis dated 6 months ago, stamped across my permanent health record like a death sentence written in administrative ink. My sister, Vanessa, had always been the reckless one, the one who made catastrophically bad decisions and somehow expected the universe to clean up after her. But this went beyond reckless into something cold and calculated that made my skin feel too tight for my bones. I found her medical history buried in online patient portals, each click revealing another layer of her desperation. She'd been born with a congenital heart defect, something she'd hidden from our family for years, through a combination of lies and carefully scheduled absences. The experimental surgery she'd needed wasn't covered by her insurance because she'd let it lapse after losing her third job in 2 years. So she'd taken mine. My name, my social security number, my entire identity, and she'd walked into that Chicago hospital wearing my life like a costume. The documentation showed she'd done her homework. She'd stolen mail from my apartment when she'd visited last Christmas. She'd memorized enough details about my medical history to answer the intake questions. She'd even practiced my signature. I could see it evolving across the forms, getting closer and closer to my handwriting until it was nearly perfect. What broke something fundamental inside me wasn't the debt or even the fraud. It was finding the consultation notes where the surgeon had asked Rebecca Hartman about her family, her support system, who would care for her during recovery, and my sister, wearing my name, had said she was alone. No one would miss her if something went wrong. She'd been right about that, at least for herself, but she'd made sure I would be the one destroyed in her place. I need to pause here and connect with you. What city are you watching from right now? What time is it where you are? Drop it in the comments because this next part gets darker, and I want to know you're really here with me. My fiancé Derek had been planning our engagement party for weeks. He'd rented out a private dining room at Canellis, this expensive restaurant overlooking Lake Union with floor-to-ceiling windows and a view that cost as much as some people's mortgages. 50 of our closest friends and family, champagne fountains, a string quartet playing in the corner. I'd planned to tell him about the medical fraud quietly, privately, after I'd hired a lawyer and started the process of clearing my name. I'd practiced the words in my bathroom mirror that morning, trying to find a way to explain that my sister had gutted my financial future and medical credibility without sounding completely insane. He didn't give me the chance. Halfway through dinner, during the toast his brother was giving about true love and partnership, Derek's phone buzzed. I watched his face change as he read something, watched the color drain from his skin. He stood up so abruptly his chair scraped against the hardwood floor, the screech cutting through the chamber music and polite laughter. "Rebecca, we need to talk, now." He pulled me into the coat room, this tiny space that smelled like cedar and expensive perfume, and his hands were shaking when he showed me his phone. Someone had sent me my medical records, the fraudulent ones, with my name attached to a terminal cardiac diagnosis, stage 4 heart failure, estimated life expectancy, 18 to 24 months with treatment. "How long were you going to wait to tell me?" His voice cracked on the last word, but not with sadness, with anger, with betrayal, with something that looked horrifyingly like disgust.
"Were you ever going to tell me? Derek, those aren't real. My sister—"
"Your sister," he laughed, this harsh sound that had nothing to do with humor. "You're going to blame your sister for your medical records? Rebecca, I saw the bills. $200,000. Your name, your social security number." I tried to explain, words tumbling over each other in my desperation to make him understand. The fraud, the stolen identity, the lawyer I'd hired just that morning. But he wasn't listening. He was looking at me like I'd already died, like I was a ghost haunting the space where his future wife used to stand. He walked back into the dining room. I followed, my heels clicking against the floor like a countdown timer. 50 faces turned toward us, smiling, expectant, waiting for whatever sweet announcement Derek was about to make. "I'm sorry, everyone," he said, his voice carrying across the sudden silence. "The engagement is off. Rebecca has been hiding a terminal illness from me, and I won't tie myself to someone who's going to leave me a widower before I'm 35. I'm not going to bankrupt myself paying for a dying woman." The room erupted. Maya jumped up, shouting. Derek's mother started crying. Someone dropped a champagne glass and it shattered across the hardwood in a spray of crystal and golden liquid. But I just stood there, frozen, feeling my heart crack apart in my chest, ironically the only heart problem I'd actually ever had. The physical sensation of complete humiliation feels like drowning in shallow water. Your lungs work fine, your body functions normally, but you can't breathe anyway because the air itself has turned poisonous. My vision tunneled down to pinpricks, my fingers went numb. Somewhere in the distance, I heard myself making a sound like a wounded animal. I left my engagement ring on the table, walked out past the pitying stares and whispered conversations, and threw up in the restaurant's immaculate landscaping. Maya found me sitting on the curb 30 minutes later, mascara striped down my face, still wearing the navy blue cocktail dress I'd spent $200 on for this disaster. She didn't say anything, just sat down next to me in her own expensive dress and put her arm around my shoulders while I shook. "We're going to destroy her," Maya said finally. "Your sister. We're going to absolutely destroy her." The federal fraud investigation took 3 months. My lawyer, a sharp-edged woman named Patricia Chen, who wore red lipstick like war paint, had been thrilled to take the case. Identity theft with medical fraud, forged documents, interstate wire fraud because the insurance claims had crossed state lines, each charge carried prison time. I spent those 3 months rebuilding my life from smoking ruins. I contested every medical bill, filed disputes with every credit bureau, got affidavits from my actual doctors confirming I'd never had heart disease. I sat through deposition after deposition, recounting the humiliation at Canlis to strangers who took notes on legal pads. Vanessa's arrest happened on a Tuesday morning. The FBI agents found her in Portland, living in a studio apartment paid for with credit cards she'd opened in my name. She'd used my identity so many times it had become easier than maintaining her own. Utility bills, rental applications, even a dating profile, all Rebecca Hartman, all carefully constructed lies. When they played the interrogation tape for me, I barely recognized her. She looked small, diminished, her natural bravado stripped away under fluorescent lights and federal charges. She kept insisting she'd planned to pay me back, that she'd had no choice, that I didn't understand how desperate she'd been. The prosecutor's office offered me a victim impact statement opportunity. I sat in that courtroom in downtown Seattle, in the same building where I'd filed the initial police report, and I looked at my sister across the gallery divide. "You didn't just steal my money," I told the judge, my voice steady despite the tremor in my hands. "You stole my credibility, my medical future, my ability to trust anyone, including myself. You cost me my engagement, my reputation, and 3 months of my life fighting to prove I exist. And you did it knowing exactly what it would cost me. That's not desperation, that's cruelty." Vanessa got 9 years in federal prison. The judge added restitution requirements that would follow her for the rest of her life, every paycheck garnished, every asset monitored. She'll be 43 when she gets out, and she'll spend decades paying back the money she stole from medical providers, insurance companies, and me. I testified at Derek's defamation lawsuit. He'd tried to sue me for fraud after the engagement ended, claiming I'd misrepresented my health. My lawyer had been almost gleeful serving him the countersuit papers. We settled out of court for an amount large enough to cover my legal fees and then some. He'd wanted to avoid the publicity of having his cruelty documented in court transcripts. I heard through mutual friends that he's engaged again, to someone younger who probably doesn't have a felonious sister or a complicated medical history, real or fabricated. I hope she knows what she's signing up for. A man who'll abandon ship the moment things get difficult. My medical records are clean now. Every fraudulent diagnosis removed, every fake procedure note expunged. I carry a letter from the Office of Inspector General certifying that I was a victim of identity theft, just in case some insurance company somewhere still has incorrect information. It's gotten easier to explain at doctor's appointments, though I still feel my shoulders tense when I hand over my ID. Maya and I took a trip to Hawaii after the trial ended, just the two of us drinking Mai Tais on a beach in Maui and watching the sunset paint the ocean in shades of amber and rose. I'd lost my fiancé but kept my best friend, which felt like the universe's way of showing me what actually mattered. I'm dating again, carefully. I lead with the story now on 3rd or 4th dates, not because I want to trauma dump, but because I need to see how men react to catastrophe. Do they listen? Do they believe me? Or do they start calculating exit strategies the moment life gets complicated? There's a particular kind of freedom that comes from having survived complete destruction. I know now that I can lose everything: money, reputation, love, identity itself, and still rebuild. That knowledge sits quiet and solid beneath my ribs, more reliable than any relationship, stronger than any promise someone else might make. I learned that family doesn't mean loyalty, that love without trust is just pretty words, and that sometimes the person who saves you is yourself. I learned to read legal documents, to advocate for my rights, to sit across from lawyers and prosecutors and insurance adjusters without flinching. I learned that I'm capable of surviving things I thought would destroy me. Most importantly, I learned that your medical records, your credit history, your reputation, these things can be stolen, but they can also be rebuilt. The work is exhausting and unfair and shouldn't be necessary, but it's possible. And sometimes proving it's possible is enough. The collections agency finally closed my case last month. 0 balance, fraudulent charges removed. They sent an official letter apologizing for the confusion, which I keep in my desk drawer next to the newspaper clipping about Vanessa's sentencing. Not because I'm cruel, but because I need the reminder that truth eventually surfaces, even when it takes federal intervention to drag it into the light. I'm 32 now, living in a new apartment with a view of Elliott Bay, working the same job I had before any of this started. I'm not engaged, not devastated, not destroyed. I'm just myself, finally, permanently, legally, Rebecca Hartman, the only person authorized to use that name, with the documentation to prove it.